An angry mob tries to remove the statue of President Andrew Jackson in Washington, D.C. Across the country, cities are buckling to pressure and removing statues of Christopher Columbus. Now, growing calls for the removal of this statue of President Abraham Lincoln, who freed the slaves.
The left-wing mob is trying to demolish our heritage so they can replace it with a new repressive regime that they alone control.
The Department of Justice says left-wing groups, including Antifa, are leading instigators of protest violence. But who is Antifa? It's an anti-fascist group formed originally in Germany in the 1930s. They were Stalinists pledged to combating the Nazis. Here in America, these anarchists are based in the Northwest.
One of their strengths that makes them effective is they stay in the shadows. They don't have a regular headquarters, regular funding. So it makes it much harder to trace exactly what they're doing, and it lets them always claim, oh, well, that isn't us and you can't prove it.
According to Scott Walter, president of the Capital Research Center, some recruits seek meaning and significance by opposing authority.
Almost anybody in Antifa is prepared to be violent. That's part of the essence of Antifa, is that you're brave and tough and manly and you're ready to be violent.
Antifa's militant wing is called Redneck Revolt. One of its main goals, abolish police departments nationwide.
The Redneck Revolt is a group active in some places, also goes by the name the John Brown Gun Club. If you know your Civil War history, of course, John Brown, shortly before the Civil War, tried to have a violent revolt.
An undercover reporter with Project Veritas recently infiltrated the group's North Carolina chapter.
This particular group sees themselves as armed revolutionaries, and they believe in total abolition of everything, including the police. There were multiple chapters of Redneck Revolt that went to Charlottesville and acted as the militia wing of the anti-fascist movement. One of their missions is to arm minorities.
Redneck Revolt invited the undercover journalist to the gun range. Initially accepted as a member, her social media activity led the group to eventually reject her.
I had Facebook posts in support of a candidate for sheriff, and that's where they said to me, that's where we fundamentally disagree. We don't believe in reform of any kind. We believe in complete abolition of the system itself, including police.
So who funds Antifa and Redneck Revolt? Walter says they don't need a lot of money.
How much money does it cost to get a black hoodie, a black face mask, and a couple of bricks, right? You don't need multi-million-dollar grants to do that.
But how about other militant left-wing groups?
And we can find some places where money like George Soros will fund something called the Alliance for Global Justice, and that is what's called a pass-through. It will then pass the money on to individual groups like Refuse Fascism, which was an Antifa-style group that started after Trump was elected.
So what can be done to stop these violent leftist groups? President Trump is set to strengthen a statute against destroying monuments on federal property, which could mean up to 10 years in prison for violators. At least in the case of Antifa, President Trump and U.S. Attorney General William Barr want them designated as terrorists. John O'Connor, a former assistant federal prosecutor for Northern California, disagrees.
You're burning the barn to roast the pig. I don't think you need to do it. I think if they are doing this in order to take advantage of some of the anti-terrorist laws, which are created by statute, I think you've got to show more of a foreign nexus.
And that may be the Trump administration's biggest challenge in combating leftist violence. Overseas support may be hard to prove. For now, it seems these leftist groups, although inspired by foreign movements, are homegrown. They're made in America. Gary Lane, CBN.